Hello there and welcome back to part 2 of this tutorial. Where we left off, we had managed to connect two clients to a single room through the relay server on Pun. The next step is to get the player in, so hopefully you guys are ready to keep going with us. So I'm just going to post in the description of this video a link to the package that you're going to need for this. So we just need a really simple first person controller. So I'm going to click import package, custom package, and on my desktop I put the package there. You'll need to do the same, so download this simple first person controller Unity package. It just contains a single script and a prefab, so once those are all imported it should be pretty easy to use them. I'll quickly explain what it is we're going to do. So this is the prefab right here, and it's got a single script here that controls all the movement. So we're going to make a scene for him just so we can test him out. So into scenes, I've got a lobby scene and I've got the sample scene here. I'm just going to use this sample scene and just rename it to game. The game scene I'm going to open up and just jump out of 2D here, and I'm just going to quickly put some ground on there. So I'm making a 3D object cube. Just reset that's position and make it scale 50 on the X and 50 on the Z, and just zoom into that. So I've got a really simple scene. The prefab you'll find is in the top layer of this simple, top level of the simple first person controller. You can drag him out onto your scene, delete the other camera because we don't need it right now, and leave the light on the scene. And if you hit play, you should see that you've got a functional player that can move around and can strafe right and left and jump, and it's all you can see it's all customizable inside this player, inside this first person controller script. So the first person controller script has a few things that we can change, but we need to turn this into our networked first person controller rather than the standard first person controller. So the first thing I think we should probably do is probably get the game manager up and running so that we can spawn this in. So what we're going to do is just click to create an empty object on the scene, and I'm going to call this game manager. This game manager is going to need a game manager script, so click add component game manager, and make a new script for that. We'll call it game manager. So create and add a new script called game manager, and we need the game manager to literally just do one thing. So it didn't seem to work up, so I'll double click that again. So here we go. So the game manager literally just needs to do one thing. It needs to know who the prefab is, so I'm going to make a public game object that's going to store the player prefab, so we'll call this player prefab. And all it really needs to do is at the start of the game, for now all this game manager really needs to do at the start of the game is spawn in the player. So it's really quite easy. We use photon network again, so we're going to need the using, and we're going to need photon.pun on this occasion. And as always, this mono behavior, we need to extend this from mono behavior pun callbacks for any of the pun based stuff. So this one just needs to use the photon network singleton. So inside of start, we're just going to do photon network dot instantiate. So we're using the instantiate from the photon network so that it instantiates across the entire, all the connected clients. If you just instantiate an object, it's only going to be visible on this local one, so we need to instantiate across all clients. So we'll use the photon network one. You'll notice if you hover over it, takes a string as the prefab name, and this confused me when I first used Pun because of the HL API from Unity, and the mirror didn't use this the same way. So this just takes a string. So because we've got the game object here as a player prefab, we're going to say player prefab.name. So that's the name of the actual prefab that we're going to use as a string. And the thing about it is it needs to be inside the resources, and we'll do that very soon. This is very similar to the standard Unity's instantiate. So it takes a vector 3, so I'm just going to make a new vector 3, and I'm just going to make up a random number like 0, 5, 0, so it's sort of in the middle of the world and 5 units up, and just going to say quaternion.identity. Now we can definitely improve on this and have some spawn points that we can find, but I'm trying to keep this simple for you guys, so hopefully you'll appreciate it's just done in one line of code. Next step is inside of Unity, this game manager sits on this main scene right here. We need to know the player prefab, but we also need to have that player prefab in a resources folder. So let's just make that. So I'm in assets right now. The way that this works for Unity is there's a bunch of folders that are special. If you call a folder resources, then Unity can look inside that resources folder for stuff. Normally you don't need to use it in a nice simple game, but this is very extensible. You can have a whole bunch more resources that you can spawn in. So we're going to take this player prefab, and we're going to drag it out of there, and we're going to put it into that resources folder. So just maybe have a little close the photon one first so I can see resources. So this player is just going to go into the resources folder. So you'll see now he disappears from my folder that I had him in before, and he now just sits inside the resources, and his name is player. One little thing that you will probably find is that this name needs to be unique because it's inside of resources. So if I was to have a red player and a blue player, I should name them unique so that we're able to spawn them in and instantiate them correctly. So we'll have a quick look right and now at what we've got. So all we're going to do with this is to instantiate this, and because it's a photon network, we need to actually be connected in order for that to happen. So I think what I'll do is I'll show you it go wrong, and we'll go from there. So I've saved this scene. If I go back to the other scene, so I go back to the lobby scene, actually before I do that, we'll just delete this player from here and save this scene again and go back to this lobby scene. When we run this, we have our button as before. I'm looking at the console messages, waiting for it to connect, and then I click play. It joined a room, yay, and nothing happened. The network manager, when we join that room, needs to be able to load in with the next level. So the network manager doesn't sit on the main game. It only sort of sits here dealing with this menu. So if I open up the network manager script inside of Visual Studio, you'll see that we join the room and we get this joined a room yay message. What we have to do is effectively check that we are the server, kind of the server. They call it master client for some weird reason. It's kind of like the host inside of mirror networking, but we'll just do a simple if statement, and we'll say if photon network dot is master client. So if we are the kind of the host, we're the only ones that's allowed to change the scene, and if we are the host, then we're going to want to load up the next scene. So we'll use photon network again, and we'll do load level. We're looking for level 1. Again, not great to hard code this number, but we'll keep it real simple. Okay, so we're loading the first scene in the build settings. One important thing with this process as well is that we need to make sure that we've got the auto synchronize of the scenes in there. So I'm going to make the awake function, which happens once the scene has loaded, and then I'm going to use this photon network again, and I'm going to use automatically sync scenes and make that equal to true. So that basically, I don't know why they don't have this automatically set as true. It's set as a false as default, because a lot of the time the individual clients will be sent an RPC from the master client when rooms have changed. But to keep it really simple, if we just automatically sync, so when the master client loads a new level, everyone loads the new level. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So when we join this room, we should spawn in using the game manager scene. The game manager is on the game scene. It should spawn in our player. I'm going to do this again just to show you it in action. Coding is all about coding in small steps and getting things wrong and working out the problems. So don't worry if it's not working out right. So we are connected. Just check my console, make sure we're connected, hit play. Oh, I forgot to see. There you go. Told you. It's all about making problems. So build settings has to have not only the lobby scene but the other scene as well, the main scene as well. So I've got the game scene and drag that into. So now they're both in the build settings, we should be able to load that scene. So I know it did work. It did try to load the scene. Just waiting for that to load in and hit play. So we're in. We've managed to spawn this. So we're in the game scene right now, but there's no cameras rendering. We're just going to fix that in the next part. So you're really seeing all of my mistakes today. I'm gonna the one thing that I forgot to do was inside the game manager, this game manager that's on the main game scene. If I go back to this game scene, the game manager that exists here, I forgot to add in the player prefab. So remember, we put it into our resources, so we need to add this player prefab into the player prefab slot for the game manager. I'm going to save that scene again, go back to the main one and show you kind of what happened. So it kind of should have worked, and you maybe noticed that yourself. So if I'm in the lobby and I wait for the connection, and when it connects I'm able to hit the play button, it does spawns in the player, I believe. So the player is in, but the error is can only instantiate objects with photon view components. The prefab does not have one. So we're going to turn this single player into a multiplayer, and one of the first things we need to do is to add this photon view component to it. So we'll get straight to that. If I go to the resources and I can find my player prefab, we're going to just take a little look at this player prefab. So the photon view is what is required. If I type in photon, you'll see some of the photon view stuff that you can do. So there's a photon transform, which we're going to need to be able to synchronize the position, rotation and scale, and then there's the actual photon view as well. If you click on this photon transform view, these are the values it's going to synchronize across the network: position and rotation. You can, if you really want to, do scale as well. There's further information if you need it about that, and it does recommend using a different method, but it'll do for now. As I said, I want to keep it as simple as possible. The photon view is the basically the master thing that serializes the information and passes it across the network, and then deserializes at the other side. So this needs to know the observed component. So the observed component we want is this photon transform view. So I'm going to drag that onto this none component here. So we're going to basically, this is what are we looking at. We are watching that thing. So we're watching this photon transform view. So we've chucked it in here so that we can synchronize the two across. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build this. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to build this, and I'm going to show you what happens when it goes wrong, and explain a little bit about how networking works as a method of sorting out and understanding. So as you can see, I've built this and I've got a couple of instances running. So when I click play on this one, you can see I can move around, which is awesome. I'm able to do exactly what I could do before. I click on the other one and I click play, and oh, that looks like it works. The issue here, however, is that when I move with this client connected, it also moves with the other one. So moving forward, backwards, right and left gets done on both because they're effectively running exactly the same script, and it exists twice on in our scene. So what we need to do is we need to basically say, are we the connected client? So are we the one who is in charge of this particular instance, or are we trying to synchronize it? Because there's all sorts of stuff going wrong with these ones. You would see 2 players connected if I was to connect inside of Unity. So we'll jump to the script and we'll try and fix that. So when we have our first-person controller script, there's a few changes that we need to make just so that we can get this working. So first up, we need to make sure that we are using photon pun again. I'm pretty sure I don't need to use photon real time on this occasion, and again, mono behavior pun callbacks is what we're after. So mono behavior pun callbacks. Just pressing control space, by the way, gives you the help that you need there. So I just added the letter P and pressed control space. So effectively, what I've done is I've made the look and the move function inside of Update. I've made them separate so that I can easily make this understandable. Basically what I need to do is I want to say if I'm the master server. So if I type in if and double tap tab, and I'll say photon view is mine. So photon view dot is mine means that if this is my component, so if this I am the local client, there is some help on this if you want to look at the documentation, but this just makes life a lot easier so that we can just type in a very short thing here. So I'm going to copy and paste those in and save that. So if only if we are the connected client, if we are the one who's supposed to be in charge, do we want to run the look and the move. So we'll take the input and we'll deal with the input only if we are this is our game object that we are in charge of. The next thing, and we may as well do it while we're here, is these components we can leave, but we effectively want to switch the camera off and the audio listener if this is not us. Otherwise we'll have 2 cameras, and I could prove this to you, and if you want to you can run it yourself and build it yourself. You'll end up viewing it through the same camera on both occasions, which just gets confusing. So again, we're going to use the same thing. So we're going to say if, and this time we're going to say if we're not the photon view is mine. So if photon view dot is mine with the exclamation mark ahead of it. So if we're not this one, then we want to disable the camera. So there's complicated ways of doing it, but I think the easiest way is just to do get component in children and look for the camera in the children. Once we have the camera, we'll set its enabled state to false, and we'll do the same with the audio listener. So again, it's get component in children, triangle brackets, and we're looking for audio listener. Oh, it's all the way down the list. Audio listener, and we'll say the enabled state is again false. So this will just switch off the camera and the audio listener for the non-connected client. So we are pretty much ready to test this again, so I will pause it to save you having to listen to me, and I'll show you what's happening when we get back. So welcome back. I've actually managed to build this out a few times, so we're going to just run a few instances. So I'm just double clicking to run an instance from a build. I'll run this also inside the editor, and then I'll try and get things, try and explain what's going on. So I've got an instance running right here. I'll just need to open this one and this one. These instances should connect. So hang on here, if I just open up this game. So you'll see we've already got 2 players connected inside the other instance. Get back up again, so I'll click on this one now. So if I play again, you'll see on the far left hand side another player connected, and actually standing on top. So we've got 2 players standing on top of each other, and in theory, if I just leave that one looking in that direction and move this one, you see them moving around on the other scenes. So we've managed to successfully connect some clients. We've managed to make sure that the connections are synchronized across the network using very few lines of code as it is right now. So hopefully I'm going to continue on with this, maybe do some shooting and maybe do a simple death match, and as always I'm going to try and keep it as absolutely simple as possible. So hopefully you're enjoying the series, and stick with it. I'll be able to post another one in another few days. Cheers.